Hey, you geeks! I did it! I read every published Cosmere book. My beginning maladroit back in Mistborn Era 1 left me in utter stupefaction. Hence why I put off reading Mistborn Era 2 until now. I can't say that I regret my decision, since the Bands of Mourning is such a sweet note to hold until the Lost Metal comes out later this year. Bands of Mourning takes off in true Mistborn fashion, pissed at a god and trying to steal or recover his power. Yet, it's the most fun ride I've had on Scadrial, and it's a sweet adventure. So strap in for this spoilerific ride, breaking down characters, world building, magic system, and plot. Steris, most valuable character of the book.
And I've got a list!
Sure, everyone has their role to play, but Steris demonstrates that being prepared is actually a superpower. Other series may joke about having a housewife in an action-adventure.
You asked what I am? A housewife!
But Sando takes it seriously and finally gives her a dynamic arc on the page. From stubbornly insisting she's boring to acknowledging that she can be interesting. And most importantly for the reader, we see her falling in love with Wax. Though I found her contract stunt in book 1 cute, I'm relieved they didn't get married for the sake of a contract. Wax.
I found God on the corner of First and Amistad.
We sort of return to the adventure-loving detective from book 1, although now he hates God, or rather, Sazed says hates himself. But Wax doesn't dwell on that. He's got bigger problems, like trying to marry Steris and mean it, and undermining a secret society trying to control the basin's politics from the shadows.
It's a game, dear man, a shadowy game.
Then, to top it all off, he has to ponder if he wants to wield the powers of a god. Well, a fraction of a splinter of a power of a god. The abstract "let's go search for lost treasure" question becomes very real very quickly.
Lightning. Fire. Power of God or something.
When, after a pleasant chat with Harmony, the powers of preservation get shoved into his hands, and he accepts them for a moment anyway. Though he does move up in the world to a tower by the end, and I very much enjoy the idea of Wayne staying in ye old Ladrian Manor, annoying the staff and insisting he's still poor. Marcy. Statistics have always been her thing, but we're finally seeing that grow into a deeper character motivation, a desire to use statistics to design a perfect society.
The world isn't run by weapons anymore, or energy, or money. It's run by little ones and zeros, little bits of data. It's all just electrons.
A noble goal, one even shared by the Lord Ruler. Marcy and Rashik also share the problem of being the one to accompany the Shard's chosen hero. But Marcy does better at being second fiddle. Instead of murdering her rival, as Wayne suggested, she gave up her power, which makes her more like Vin than she will probably ever know. Now that Marcy has found a purpose not being a legend, rather just a good civil servant, I hope she's not forced into a similar situation as she continues her hunt for Trell. For the moment, at least, she has good relations with the South.
Self-pleasuring technique that I've detailed in Chapter 7, entitled Up with Chocolate.
Wayne has gotten decidedly more morally gray, making a splash at Wax and Steris' first wedding was, of course, completely appropriate and unpardonably rude. I find his low standard for divinities disturbing, since his devotion to Renette had not been respectful or reciprocated. But he's over that now.
The bunny. Yeah, I love the bunny.
At least his attraction to Milan is reciprocated with gusto, and I like that he likes her as she is, goo and all.
Have you seen what she wears? Forget about it. Have you ever been with a warrior woman?
I'm only mildly disturbed that he shot Telson in the face, since he seemed to know on some level she would heal. He knows that a gun blast to the face for a gold fairing is the equivalent of a normal person getting punched. But Wayne did not seem too rational after Wax died. So how much of this was actually going through his head, and how much was after the fact rationalization? This, along with whatever happened to the Lord Mistborn's cufflinks, we'll probably never know. At least he's finally supportive of Wax and Steris's relationship. It took Steris saving them all up in the mountains, which is probably what he considers a fair trade.
There's no time for sin and vice, living in an Amish paradise.
The question, why does God allow evil to happen, is for theists a rather common question we all have to ask ourselves at some point. If we find we like the answer, we remain theist. If not, then faith becomes a lot less important. The upshot is that a lot of ink has been devoted to this topic. Sanderson's contribution to this question, that Harmony did what he knew Wax needed him to do, is an admirable contribution, though I have questions about the details. Overall, I heartily approve of how the Ellendale Basin has been sculpted to be perfect, yet its citizens are on the brink of war over tariffs. If only the ancient Ska could have been so lucky. The world perfectly underpins the series' overall theme. There is no magic formula to create a true paradise.
There is no key. Doofus! A couple of lines of computer code are going to crash the world around our ears. I'm disappointed.
No matter how many actions a divinity may take, so long as man has free will, he will find a way to screw it up. The Bands of Mourning also adds the new flavor that growth comes through adversity, something the Basin had been long lacking. Identity, intent, and connection. The big three rules of investiture find their humble origin here. Sure, I followed other characters on other worlds stumble into these concepts, but this is the book that nicely spells out how they all play together in a slideshow. Evanescope.
This is a slide projector and a bedsheet.
And more importantly, we get to see them all at work in the amazing technologies brought by the Malwish, like a telephone.
Hello, hello, baby, you called, I can't hear a thing.
Or good old, I don't know what this thing does, but I found a creative use for it anyway.
Grenade fire.
I won't get tired of seeing people marvel and struggle with new technology anytime soon. Like how our main characters struggled to describe the airship made it sound like the Star Destroyer that crashed in Minneapolis. I'd wager both were designed to look like sci-fi Viking ships. So it should be no surprise that my favorite example of connection was the Malwish accent, don't you know?
Hello, I'm the Swede who went up a hill and came down with all the strawberries.
After 2 books of Wayne waxing poetically about the nature of accents, Sando goes and gives them a whole magical explanation, you know? Which Alec, the exposition fairy, helpfully explained. You know, language and accent may be difficult for some to understand, but not for me. For example, I heard Alec call Wax Odinstall, and recognized that stall meant steel, and Odin is a god, so Godsteel made sense. Then I wondered if I had misheard. Had Michael Kramer said Hodenstall, which would have been equally appropriate for Wax, though rather crass for Sando. Besides, Sando never does direct translations, just near translations. So I had to go to my public library to pick up a physical copy of this book. Turns out Alex said Photonstall, which of course doesn't translate directly into anything, but I do think stall still refers to steel, and photon comes from photon, meaning light. That fits with the Cosmere's underlying magic system much better. Plot. The first act is really quite dark. Our crew is off to find lost antiquities guarded by monsters of eldritch horror. Only after the bullets start flying do things lighten up, especially when the monsters are just very cold southerners. Sure, I'd heard of southern Scadrians before, but I was still surprised when we met Alec in a cage. Sando really had me going with the red and black faces, which were reminiscent of another Cosmere race who, on Scadrial, would be aliens. Though I am so glad the Malwish weren't space aliens. Sando does aliens well, but if he did them here, we'd be at the risk of overdoing it. And there's something unsavory about Indiana Jones tales ending with space aliens.
Saucermen from Mars.
The legends about Akator are all true. Early men could not have conceived it, much less built it.
Okay, fine, there were 2 space aliens in this book, but one was more like fan service and Hoyd was, well, Hoyd. He does his beggar act and simply hands Wax the crucial clue to solving the New Saren mystery. I couldn't believe it. We were halfway into part 2 and Wax was just given the solution. Marcy even finds the spike, the object of her fetch quest, by the beginning of part 3. And then she finds a new adventure.
I'm sorry you've never seen me before. I must shock you.
Being around the fandom spoiled so many of the reveals for me in this book, but that didn't ruin the book. Knowing Telsin would shoot Wax, who would die and come back, meant I could enjoy the Reichenbach Falls imagery that laced the story.
Birchbrook in German is Reichenbach. The case that made my name. Just trying to have some fun.
Though, in true Sando fashion, when both Wax and his uncle finally do plummet to their apparent deaths, it feels quite natural and authentic to the story. Also, knowing Telsin was in the set from the beginning meant I could savor the brilliance of her shooting the brute, while acknowledging that every action she took hindered the team. Although being told that the bands of Mourning were reforged into a spearhead lessened the shock of all the fake-out bands.
I have the power! Really? Of course! Watch! What's wrong?
But that spoiler did not convey the all-important plot point that using investiture requires knowledge and intent. That was slyly slipped in with Wayne's new metal mind and all those coins. Nor did I realize Morrissey would be the first to wield the bands of Mourning, and what it would mean when she gave them up.
Being mean back to a bully just makes me a bully too.
There's nothing like an insane treasure hunt to realize that the true treasure was the friends we made along the way. That and new technology from the South, inspired by the so-called ruler who, shocker, was Kelsier the Cad all along.
The final problem. Staying alive!
Of course he would think it's a good idea to tempt his followers with divine power, then set up a truly wicked temple. A temple of doom, as it were. I'm very worried about what his plans are moving forward. Despite all the mind-blowing reveals in this book, which I totally loved, I still have one question. What's with the mask? Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.